This is CNN.
President Clinton challenges world economic leaders to use technology to whip unemployment.
Battling the nuclear industry from beyond the grave, the struggle to make the government accountable kicks off a series on America's nuclear shame.
And they may not win the Iditarod, but they do win the hearts of the spectators. A look at the race's most unusual team. This is NewsHour. I'm Bobby Batista at CNN Center in Atlanta.
And I'm Reed Collins in Washington. Just days after the Clinton administration lost the top lawyer in the White House with the resignation of the counsel, Bernie Nussbaum, another attorney and longtime first family friend is on the brink of leaving. Latest now exclusive from CNN senior White House correspondent Wolf Blitzer, who's traveling with the president in Detroit. Wolf, what's up?
Reed, CNN has learned that Associate Attorney General Webster Hubbell is now on the verge of resigning. Sources say he could, in fact, resign as early as later today, though a Justice Department official says he has not formally resigned yet. The president was asked about this only a few moments ago and dodged reporters' questions, though his senior advisor, Bruce Lindsay, formally said no comment. Sources say Hubbell has been embarrassed by word that his old law firm in Little Rock, the Rose Law Firm, was involved in a major audit of his billing practices and billing expenses while he was a senior partner there. At issue, they say, is whether Hubbell did anything wrong, and apparently officials at the Rose Law Firm are now coming to the conclusion that there was something amiss. Only days ago, Attorney General Janet Reno and White House Chief of Staff Mac McClarty defended Hubbell, dismissing reports of a Rose audit as not significant.
He explained and told me that he and his former law partners were reviewing partnership matters. He told me that the firm had some questions which often arise when a partner leaves a law firm, and that he was working with the firm to answer these questions. He advised me that he had not overbilled or done anything wrong. At this point, I have no substantiated information that Mr. Hubbell has done anything wrong.
The sources stress that a Hubbell resignation would involve only his activities before formally joining the Clinton administration and not because of anything he has done as the number 3 official at the Justice Department. Still, given the entire uproar over the Whitewater affair and last week's resignation of Bernard Nussbaum as White House counsel, any such Hubbell resignation would certainly further embarrass the White House. Reed?
Wolf, as you indicate, disputes over expense accounts are not unusual in a given job or a past one. Is it possible that that this can be the only thing, given the other overhanging questions?
Well, there was suggestions, both Janet Reno and Mac McClarty suggested when they were defending Mr. Hubbell in the past week or two that at issue were relatively small sums. But now it appears that at issue is a much larger sum. In fact, the Wall Street Journal reports today that there is some $1 million in Hubbell-related billing expenses and personal expenses that are being reviewed now by this audit at the Rose Law Firm. So if that Wall Street Journal report is true, that obviously raises this entire matter to a much higher level.
All right, Wolf Blitzer live with the president in Detroit. Thank you. The first so-called job summit is the occasion of Detroit. President Clinton and representatives of the other group of 7 nations are there to discuss ways and means of creating more jobs for their nations in the 90s. The president kicked off a 2-day conference by saying unemployment is a global problem.
One lesson is clear. There is no rich country on earth that can expand its own job base and its incomes unless there is global economic growth. In the absence of that growth, poorer countries doing the same thing we do for wages our people can't live on will chip away at our position. When there is a lot of growth, you can be developing new technologies, new activities, and new markets. That is our only option. We also, therefore, must create those new markets. That means we have to be investing in job-creating technologies, from dual-use military and civilian technologies as we reduce defense spending, to an information superhighway connecting every classroom and library in the country.
The latest CNN USA Today Gallup poll would indicate unemployment is the top economic concern of those surveyed. 37% felt that way, 24% said the budget deficit, 13% said it was taxes. 57% said they'd be worried about finding a new job were they fired or laid off, and 42% said they would not worry. The poll surveyed about 1,000 adults last week.
Police in Charlotte, North Carolina arrested Henry Louis Wallace on a larceny charge last month, but released him the same day. Since then, police say the 28-year-old Wallace murdered 4 women. In all, Wallace is charged with killing 10 women in Charlotte during a 20-month period. Police say he may have strangled and robbed the victims to support a crack habit. He allegedly knew all of the victims and had worked with some of them at fast food restaurants. Since his arrest Saturday, police say they've received information that Wallace may also be responsible for a death in South Carolina. The state of Florida is tired of supporting illegal aliens and plans to sue the federal government over it. Governor Lawton Chiles estimates Florida government spent $844 million last year alone to care for illegal aliens. He says he will seek reimbursement, alleging federal immigration policy poses a nightmare for state and local governments forced to shoulder the burden. Florida has an estimated 345,000 illegal aliens. And this month, the Clinton administration reportedly will unveil a new plan to overhaul the system by which political asylum is granted. But the Washington Post says the new system, which will include an application fee, will leave up to 1 million asylum seekers stuck in a bureaucratic backlog for years to come.
British police say there could be more IRA mortars hidden about London's Heathrow airport waiting to go off. And they're mounting a search for the devices and the battery-powered timers that they think are firing the projectiles. CNN's Margaret Lowry has an update.
Heathrow was back in operation Monday. What is happening there appears to be as much psychological warfare as guerrilla tactic. After 3 mortar attacks on Heathrow in 5 days, it was the telephone that finally brought London's 2 major airports to a standstill. Heathrow and Gatwick closed for several hours Sunday as police searched for more hidden mortars after receiving a new series of coded IRA threats Sunday evening.
We're going to search today, we're going to search tomorrow, and we'll research until we think the area is clear.
The British Army has now joined the security effort. Although it is a low-profile addition, only a handful of troops to help search. Some British politicians want more.
It is clearly unacceptable that day after day, major airports around London are being closed because of IRA activity. And most members of Parliament, indeed the public, will expect the government to come to the House of Commons to tell us in what action it's prepared to take.
In the 3rd attack at Heathrow Sunday morning, 1 mortar landed on the roof of a terminal, but it did not explode, nor did 3 others. But the airports only shut after the new threats came many hours later. No attack followed, but by now authorities took no chances and for the first time closed both airports. 60 flights were affected.
It's amazing that it's happened again and, you know, nothing's been done.
I can understand that they have to, hold people up from a security point of view. But I feel that people should be told about their delays.
Irish Prime Minister Albert Reynolds condemned the IRA.
A gross miscalculation by the IRA. It's not going to advance the peace process, and it's certainly not going to do anything to endear themselves to the general public.
He insists the peace process is still open for those who want to join it, but the IRA Sunday rejected the Anglo-Irish initiative known as the Downing Street Declaration. Instead, it wants direct talks with the British, a stance foreshadowed by the party conference of the IRA's political wing, Sinn Féin, last month.
The 2 governments had believed Sinn Féin leader Gerry Adams was ready for peace, but experts say the IRA is terrorism by committee, and while Adams' desire for peace may have been correctly gauged, they may have overestimated his ability to deliver it. Margaret Lowry, CNN, London.
Well, tomorrow, the voters of Chicago decide the political fate of one of the most powerful members of Congress, Illinois Democrat Dan Rostenkowski. The chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee is locked in a close battle with the state senator, John Cullerton. Rostenkowski's reputation has taken a beating since a federal grand jury began investigating his campaign and office finances nearly 2 years ago. Next on NewsHour, a tanker and freighter collide and a deadly inferno engulfs a busy shipping lane. Also, government workers exposed to radiation. We'll have a special report on America's nuclear shame.
Alors, Henri, comment elle trouve l'Amérique, ta fille?
Son papa lui manque.
Enfin, il y a beaucoup de choses qui lui rappellent la France. Eh ben, tu peux rire, mais en attendant, ils ont le même café là-bas qu'ici. Pas possible.
Folgers French Roast, fire roasted, mountain grown beans for a darker, stronger taste than regular coffee.
Alors, Vérica et Pixie.
Fire roasted Folgers French Roast.
C'est Folgers dans la tasse.
The whole idea of saving for retirement is to get ahead. But if your IRA has annual fees and mutual fund sales charges, it can set you back from the start. To make all your money work for you, put it into a Schwab no annual fee IRA. You can choose from over 200 no-load mutual funds and pay no sales charges. And this performance guide is yours free when you open an account. So to make all your IRA money work for you,
maybe it's time to come to Schwab.
How would you like to learn to cook delicious Spanish cuisine in beautiful Madrid? Enter Bay's Passport to Spain recipe contest, and the 2-week trip may be yours. Send us your original hors d'oeuvre or appetizer recipe using Bay's English muffins, and Iberia Airlines may fly you and a friend to spend a week cooking at the Alembic School. Then send you on a driving tour through the Spanish countryside. Look for specially marked packages in your grocer's dairy case. Bay's.
The people you've been looking at all believe that a car saved their lives.
A busy international shipping lane still is closed today after a freighter and tanker collided. The collision late last night produced a burning oil slick in the Bosporus, the narrow strait that links the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. At least 12 crew members are dead and 28 injured and 14 others still are missing. Firefighters say the blaze is under control, although the tanker still was spilling flaming crude oil this morning. The tanker carried about 16 million gallons of crude bound from Russia to Italy.
Human guinea pigs sacrificed for national security. Thousands of people contaminated in nuclear tests by the builders of America's atomic bombs. All part of the legacy of the super-secret U.S. Department of Energy. Today, CNN Special Reports begins a week-long investigation into America's nuclear shame. Correspondent Stephen Frazier opens in the rural South, where the legal floodgates could burst for some of the hundreds of thousands of nuclear workers who may have been exposed to harmful radiation.
I have a story that I think everyone in America should know about. This is not a love story or a mystery, and it's certainly not fiction.
In the farmland of western Kentucky, Joe Harding speaks with a voice from the grave.
This is just a real, true life story of part of my life.
Hours before he died, Joe Harding described his fatal cancer, which he said he developed working at a government plant that enriched uranium for nuclear reactors, or nuclear bombs. The plant is still operating, miles of pipe and screens now turning out fuel for nuclear power plants. The manager gives tours to Boy Scouts and says the place is clean today. That's what managers said when Joe Harding worked there from 1952 to 1971.
I spent all those years working in the high radiation area, breathing uranium hexafluoride gas that had vaporized when it leaked out of the system, and you could taste it coated on your teeth and taste it in your throat and in your lungs, and when you coughed, you'd cough up that strong taste.
Uranium gave off radioactivity, but they were told no more than a wristwatch that glowed in the dark.
And we were always tracking through uranium hexafluoride powder on the floor that was thick enough that you'd leave tracks in it where you had walked.
When sores erupted on his skin, Joe Harding's wife, Clara, began to worry.
When his ankles started breaking out and his legs started breaking out, I knew something was wrong. And he said, I guess it's that stuff I'm waiting in out there, honey. Well, you can see by our pictures that he was always big and strong.
Joe was 31 and healthy, but over the next 7 years, more rashes, nausea, several surgeries, a 60-pound weight loss. Down to 112 pounds, he was too weak to do the job. So Union Carbide, the company running the plant for the government, let him go. And when Carbide refused to pay him disability, Joe Harding filed a claim for workers' compensation.
He took it to court once, and all the lawyers from New York and all came. And they went up and talked to the judge, and when they talked to the judge, they said they weren't ready to have it there yet, that they'd have it later, at a later date. Well, the later dates never come.
14 years after he died, 11 years after his case was reopened by his widow, Joe Harding's claim is still contested by the Department of Energy. But Mrs. Harding has a new champion in this David and Goliath struggle. Robert Hager, one of the lawyers who argued before the Supreme Court in the case of Karen Silkwood, the first worker at a nuclear facility to blow the whistle on sloppy health and safety procedures.
The DOE is worried that if somebody wins one of these cases, other lawyers will come along and bring more cases, and then their strategy fails. They can't defend them all. Their policy seems to be it's a scorched earth policy of settle no claims and litigate to the hilt to make sure every lawyer in the country knows that if you try to bring a radiation claim against the DOA, you're going to have a very expensive row to hoe. And that's what they've proven in this case.
Jake Chavez of the Department of Energy is one of 3 lawyers defending the claim. In Washington, the department denied any of its lawyers took on such claims, but in Albuquerque, Jake Chavez said he has defended or resolved several.
If the case has no merit from the standpoint of, causation, which is what we're talking about in these cases, that the radiation didn't cause the injury, then it's profitable, in my viewpoint, to defend the case, even though it may be costly.
Costly indeed. To deny Joe Harding's $50,000 claim, the DOE told Congress it has spent $104,000 taxpayer dollars.
The amount of money that they were willing to spend to prevent Clara Harding from getting a few dollars in her declining years here is rather enormous once you see the whole package.
It told CNN, which asked about hidden costs, it has spent $126,000, including fees for Jake Chavez and other lawyers and expert witnesses, including scientist Clarence Lushbaugh. For years, Dr. Lushbaugh conducted radiation experiments on people. He testified that Joe Harding had not been exposed to enough radiation to make him sick.
They was using Joe as a guinea pig. They knew that he had it in his knuckles and on his elbows and knees and feet, and ankles and everywhere. They just not gone on up to it.
We were actually zeroing out all the immense amount of background radiation that was normally there in that.
When they discuss radiation exposures, the government's witnesses may be using bad numbers. In his tapes, Joe Harding tells how he routinely falsified Geiger counter readings to satisfy supervisors eager to meet production deadlines. Nobody ever told him to erase a number and put in a lower one. He says he was just told a shipment of uranium was leaving that night, so test it, Joe, and get us a good reading. Joe Harding said he and his co-workers went along. They're all dead now, so there's no proof. It's just a story the DOE won't accept.
If you don't defend cases that should be defended, you may soon find yourself inundated with, claims that it would be unconscionable to continue to pay.
In Washington, the new Secretary of Energy is making public the costs of the nuclear program.
Perhaps our most important challenge for the next 40 or 50 years will be to put the nuclear genie back in the bottle.
And yet, says Robert Hager, that hasn't changed the way the DOE is treating Joe Harding's claim.
We have a new head at the DOE, but I don't think the new head is attached to the body. That the body is this now headless monster, I think, keeps stumbling forward in this old world because it knows no other world.
While lawyers and scientists debate the effects of low-level radiation on Joe Harding, some neighbors of the Paducah plant try to live with radiation's unwelcome presence. Ron and Doris Lamb and their daughter Marty drink bottled water now and cook with it. Water from their well contains trace amounts of plutonium and other radioactive and chemical toxins which seeped into the ground from the enrichment plant.
We don't dare use the tap water for drinking, only for bathing.
The Lambs must still use well water for showers and laundry and dishwashing.
It's always a concern. It never leaves your mind. You know you're not drinking it, but you know you can't help getting it on you when you bathe and your clothes are saturated in it. It's not fair.
Ron and Doris both suffer with illnesses of unexplained origin.
You get sick those months and then come find out there was uranium running down the creek right within a few feet of your well. Makes you worry.
For years, the Department of Energy denied their well was contaminated. Now, the Commonwealth of Kentucky tests it.
They come every week, check our water, and send us results that says technetium TC99 is less than 25 picocuries per liter, and the TCE is less than 5 picocuries per liter. It's a form letter.
It is possible for low-level radiation to cause cancer, but the Department of Energy says possibility is not proof. Like Joe Harding, Ron Lamb can't shake the belief that the plant made him sick. He says the Energy Department could be mistaken. It was in the past and lied about its mistakes.
They don't want you to know how much would hurt you. If it ever comes out that a little is bad for you, well, they're in trouble.
If the government offered to relocate the Lambs, they would move. If it offered compensation to Joe Harding's widow, she would settle. It has offered neither. Stephen Frazier, CNN Special Reports, Paducah, Kentucky.
Tomorrow, the time was the post-war 40s. For some, radiation was an untested medical miracle. For others, it was a deadly new discovery. We'll look at one mother's search for the truth as we continue our series on America's nuclear shame.
And just ahead on NewsHour, new debate over bathhouses and the fight against AIDS.
Bill's such an active guy. I sure didn't expect to hear him talking about retirement.
Yep. Every year like clockwork, straight in the IRA.
Bill, you're never going to retire. You're going to run forever.
Well, who said anything about retiring? That's the time for me to do what I want.
That's going to take financial independence.
That's the plan.
Whatever your retirement goals, the key to achieving them is to have a plan. Fidelity Investments can help you get there.
We saved and saved to move into a new house. But as I finished our change of address cards, I saw we have to pay more attention to the most important savings of all.
My IRA statement. Look at that.
Oh, boy.
We gotta do better than this.
Ooh, I agree. We gotta move this, too.
Fidelity offers a wide range of mutual funds for your retirement savings. And now, for Fidelity retirement investors, we've waived the sales charges on more than a dozen of our stock mutual funds. So call Fidelity today for a free IRA fact kit, including Fidelity's retirement planning guide. Call 1-800-372-5959.
First came the Vikings, then the Normans, the Saxons. All of them found Ireland irresistible. So think what a grand time we'd show you, especially since you'd be the only ones of the lot we actually invited. Ireland. 1 week coach tours, including accommodations, from $4.99. Call 1-800-SHAMROCK for a free vacation kit.
Tonight, the war in Bosnia through the eyes of a child. The little girl who brought Capitol Hill to a standstill with her dramatic war diary. On Larry King Live tonight, 9 Eastern on CNN.
It took 3 years for Ohio's abortion literature law to get from the State House to the clinics, but today the 1991 law finally took effect. It requires that women be given a pamphlet outlining alternatives to abortion at least 24 hours before the procedure is performed. Abortion rights groups unsuccessfully challenged the law in court, arguing the pamphlet was disrespectful of women and their capacity to make reasonable decisions.
San Francisco's bathhouses have been part of the AIDS story since the virus first surfaced. In today's News from Medicine, CNN's Susan Reed reports on efforts to turn the bathhouses into centers for safe sex education.
Gay bathhouses are generally considered breeding grounds for the deadly AIDS virus. In San Francisco, the city shut them down a decade ago. The message, no unsafe sex. It was a huge controversy, personal freedom versus fighting a deadly disease. Now, a decade later, the issue is back.
In a city where half of the gay men are infected with the HIV virus, the reopening of a bathhouse and what that means is more symbolic than substantive, because sex clubs have never disappeared from the scene.
But decadent bathhouse behavior was killing too many people. Today, Steamworks is different. Its policy, no alcohol, drugs, or unsafe sex.
If they continue to disobey the rules, then we ask them to leave.
Rules set by businesses, the city, and health professionals.
I don't think that opening a bathhouse is going to increase the chance of people getting AIDS in San Francisco. People are going to have sex, they are having sex. What it does do is gives us a chance to reach people with HIV prevention messages that we might not otherwise reach.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta recently evaluated Steamworks' safe sex program and told county officials it was a model for the nation.
We constantly hit the customers over and over again with the same safer sex message.
Health workers reach men otherwise unreachable.
There are a number of patrons who come here who don't identify as gay, even though they may have sex with other men. Some of them may be married with the wife and 2 kids and the dog, and etc. Others may be young men, 18 to 21.
Young gay men and heterosexuals have the most rapid rate of infection today.
Gives them an opportunity to learn behaviors that can protect themselves in other venues.
Steamworks will only get a permit to open in San Francisco if it proves private rooms will be monitored. Some argue that's impossible.
I mean, I can't think of a greater invasion of privacy than trying to separate people to see if they're having safer sex. Leads me to believe that it really can't be monitored in any appropriate way.
Partner up. Opening a new bathhouse has not become a huge controversy. Maybe a sign of the times that teaching as many people as possible about safe sex is the best way to fight AIDS. Susan Reed, CNN, San Francisco.
News from Medicine is brought to you by Bristol Myers Squibb Company, makers of Theragram M, the complete multivitamin for active people.
For those with a passion for life, there's Theragram multivitamins. Theragram has been recommended by doctors for over 30 years. So wherever you are in life, you can fully embrace it. Theragram M, for those with a passion for life.
Kimberly Twigg, Kimberly Mays. She was switched at birth, but adopted children often face Kimberly's choice. Whom do I want as a parent? Today on Sonia Live, 1 p.m. Eastern, only on CNN.
From Philly to Fresno, you've seen it, you've tried it, and you've switched to Extra Classic Bubblegum. That great classic bubblegum flavor lasts an extra long time. So now there's a coast-to-coast burst of enthusiasm for Extra Classic. Hey, when classic bubblegum flavor lasts an extra long time, it's irresistible. Try Extra Classic with NutraSweet. Classic bubblegum flavor that lasts an extra long time.
Meow, 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 meow.
Something fishy's going on with Meow Mix. They added even
even more delicious salmon flavor to the chicken, turkey, and salmon tastes cats love. So give him the tastes he's fishing for.
Meow, 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 meow.
Meow Mix brand cat food with more salmon flavor. The only cat food that tastes so good, cats ask for it by name.
Wherever you're waking up, there's freshly brewed coffee by the cup.
Folgers Coffee Singles is ground roast Folgers in its own filter for one great cup. Anywhere
Best part of waking up
is Singles in your cup.
Just ahead on NewsHour, a check on the top stories of the day. And live from New York, the latest on the financial world.
And how what some people call the good book can provide lessons about good food.
And a long way from Moscow and a communist past, how one Russian island tries to steer toward capitalism.
NewsHour continues, followed by Sonia Live after this local commercial break. Next on CNN.
When I leave town today, this sofa, all this beautiful furniture goes back to Court Furniture Rental. I'd love to own it, but I was only going to be in town for a few months, so my company leased it. Now Court's going to sell it at its clearance center. Somebody's going to get a great deal.
It's true. The Court Clearance Center sells brand-name furniture at fantastic savings.
Visit Court's clearance centers and find reasonable prices on previously leased office and residential furniture. Stop in and see our buys.
Celtics a 3-on-1 on a picnic.
Being around professional athletes, I know how hard it is to work to stay in shape and how difficult it is to find that suit that really fits. That's why Eastern Clothing has that special design athletic cut suit.
The athletic cut suit at Eastern Clothing with wider shoulders and a narrow waist. It's custom made for those who work out.
So if you work hard to look good, you want a suit that fits.
This is CNN.
Checking our top stories on NewsHour now. President Clinton today kicked off a job summit in Detroit. The gathering of economic leaders from the group of 7 nations is aimed at coming up with ideas to decrease global unemployment. Mr. Clinton today said nations must use new job-creating technologies to help improve living standards for their citizens. British police are scouring London's Heathrow airport for more IRA mortars, but they say there is no foolproof way to prevent another attack. Several mortars were fired at the airport yesterday for the 3rd time in a week. Like before, none exploded, but the airport was closed for a couple of hours along with London's Gatwick Airport. Sources say Associate Attorney General Webster Hubbell is on the verge of resigning, possibly as early as today. Hubbell is reportedly embarrassed by an internal audit at his former law firm in Little Rock. Sources say the audit questioned his billing practices and personal expenses.
Wall Street is up and running. Let's go to Myron Candell now at the Business News Desk in New York. Mike?
Well, thanks, Reed. About 3,000 General Motors workers walked off the job an hour and a half ago at 2 factories in Dayton, Ohio, after contract negotiations broke down. The plants make brake systems and other auto parts. The members of the United Auto Workers Union are demanding more job security and are asking GM to stop using parts from non-union factories. Talks ought to resume tomorrow. Blue chip stocks have been seesawing in a very narrow range today, following shifts in the bond market. Right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 3 points at 38.59. Big board volume is heavy, 141 million shares traded so far. All our other key indexes are modestly higher. Inflation fears are once again weighing on the bond market ahead of tomorrow's report on wholesale inflation. The Treasury's 30-year bellwether bond is down 1/4 point in price, the yield up to 6.92%. Checking some individual stocks in the spotlight today, Apple Computer is up 3/4 point, officially unveiling its latest computer line called Power Macintosh. The high-powered personal computer will use a microprocessor developed by Apple, IBM, and Motorola. Shares of IBM gaining 1.5 and Motorola up 1. Motorola also benefiting from a deal to sell more cellular phones in Japan. Federal Express soaring 3.5%, profits nearly tripling in the latest quarter, and Walt Disney down 1 1/8. It will provide more than $500 million in cash to help its struggling Euro Disney theme park near Paris. Finally, as Reed and Bobby reported earlier, leaders from the 7 most powerful industrial nations are meeting in Detroit to discuss jobs. For the inside details of that jobs summit, be sure to watch Moneyline with Lou Dobbs tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. Lou's guest will be Kenneth Clark, Britain's Chancellor of the Exchequer. That's the latest in business news. I'm Myron Kandel in New York.
And coming up in Jim Huber Sports, the field of 64 is ready to battle for the national championship.
The whole idea of saving for retirement is to get ahead. But if your IRA has annual fees and mutual fund sales charges, it can set you back from the start. To make all your money work for you, put it into a Schwab no annual fee IRA. It's guaranteed free of annual fees for the life of the account. And with Schwab's Mutual Fund One-Source service, you can invest in over 200 no-load mutual funds from well-known fund companies and pay no sales charges. That way, every dollar you invest goes to work for you from the start. And to help select the funds that may be right for you, this Mutual Funds Performance Guide is yours free when you open an IRA account. To find out more about the Schwab No Annual Fee IRA, call 1-800-5-NO-LOAD. Get the IRA with the information you want without the fees you don't. Call 1-800-5-NO-LOAD today. So to make all your IRA money work for you,
Maybe it's time to come to Schwab.
What's this? An athletic shoe commercial with no celebrity athlete? At New Balance, we don't pay celebrities to wear our shoes. Which leaves us plenty of money for other things, like building better shoes. New Balance, a more intelligent approach to building shoes.
If you're looking for a reliable place to service your car or truck, I've got great news for you. It's a Pep Boys Automotive Super Center. No matter what you drive, their ASC certified technicians are here when you need them, day or night, even on Sunday. For Rebestus brakes, TRW rack and pinion repair, diagnostic tune-ups, even air conditioning. For dealer quality service at prices you can afford, come to Pep Boys and drive away happy.
I'm Sonia Friedman. After rejecting her biological parents, the Twigs, Kimberly Mays has had a change of heart and moved in with them. Adopted children often face a similar dilemma. Who are my real parents and where do I belong? That's later on Sonia Live.
And what else is news out there? Well, how about Alaska's grueling Iditarod Trail sled dog race? Our story isn't about who's ahead. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, a look at one of the dog teams that's bringing up the rear, at least back in the pack. These are not the usual snow races. They're purebred show dogs. Our report comes from Tim Haas at CNN's affiliate KTUU in Anchorage.
It's a safe bet that Jamie Nelson's dog team will not win the Iditarod. But if the race gave an award for the best of show, this team would be the easy favorite. This team is made up of registered, purebred Malamutes.
Hi. It came about a couple of years back to see if a purebred Malamute team could do it. The owner, breeder of the whole crew, owns Storm Cloud Kennels from Wisconsin, and she's always wanted to see if they retain any of their working abilities.
You would like me to do your feet, huh?
So far, except for a few sore feet, Nelson says the experiment is a success.
I mean, they're tough enough. They're going for me. They're leaving checkpoints.
You guys know this?
They're working for me. They're not working fast, but you don't work fast if your feet hurt either.
These dogs are picture perfect, at least to race fans along the trail. They can't seem to get enough of these faces.
That's Joshua, and the other one's Jacob.
Even if they are at the back of the pack.
At a nice slow trot, these guys go forever.
And hopefully to know.
And hopefully to know.
So while you won't see Jamie Nelson's name in the first 20 or even 30 mushers this year, that really doesn't matter. For this team, it isn't speed that counts, it's style.
But speed does count if you're trying to win, and a musher born in Switzerland has the lead again. About 3/4 of the way into Iditarod, Martin Boozer is in front. Next come Rick Mackey, Jeff King, Bill Cotter, and Didi Johnrau. Boozer, who's won the Iditarod once, could cross the finish line in Nome, Alaska late tomorrow, maybe early Wednesday. In Arizona, a city mayor is accused of taking hardball politics up to a new level. Rex Bird of Quartzsite is facing charges he hired a hitman to kill a political rival. Authorities say the 70-year-old had conspired to have a former mayor killed for $10,000. Authorities say an informant tipped them off to the plot. They staged a murder scene to make the mayor Bird think the hit had been actually carried out.
Well, what do we say to that? I don't...
What?
Okay, on to the NCAAs, I guess.
Yeah, speaking of hitmen, yeah.
Right.
By now you know the particulars, I suppose. Your favorite college team has either ascended to the heights of the field of 64 or been shouldered into the oblivion of the NIT. North Carolina, Purdue, Arkansas, and Missouri, the NCAA top seeds after a furiously upsetting weekend, which probably cost teams like Connecticut and Arizona #1 seeds. But the man who continues to elevate himself beyond the fray wears a Purdue jersey. Glenn Robinson against Illinois on Sunday. How good is this guy? Just watch. He is so good. He had a career-high 49 as Purdue wraps up its first Big Ten championship since 1988 and nails down the #1 seed in the Southeast Regional.
It was a great time to get into a zone, last game of the season at home, and for the Big Ten championship.
I didn't know he could have that many points. You know, 49 points, I had no idea. And he just keeps working, and his teammates keep feeding him, and it's amazing what he's done this year.
It was Glenn Robinson's last game at home, and now he'll take on the tournament before joining the big boys. He will be a good professional. Mixed in amongst the Shaqs and Sir Charleses, those two went at it Sunday in Orlando, went at it good, tugging on each other's shorts in the process, elbowing each other's eardrums at the same time. Watch this play as Shaquille gets him right in the ear. Ooh, I can't hear you. Good game. Nick Anderson inside O'Neal, who fights off the foul, gets the basket to fall to tie the game at 87. But down the stretch, it was Barkley and friends inside and off balance, maybe because of the eardrum, giving the Suns some breathing room, and they win it by 7. Let's roll through all the scores now. I'll be back with a thought on Tag Team Tonya right after this commercial break. Stay with us.
Something smells good.
What's this?
For you.
How thoughtful. What else? I already have Taster's Choice.
You can't get too much of a good thing.
Savor the sophisticated taste of Taster's Choice.
I love these peaceful Sundays.
Hi, Mom.
There's so much to do in Texas, it's easy to pretend you're in a whole other country.
For vacation this year, we visited the great historic missions of Spain.
This is Texas, Marge.
Huh? We're here on Loch Ness, searching for the Loch Ness Monster. Ooh, could that be it?
That's my bait here.
Call 1-800-8888-TEX, and you'll get our new 272-page Texas travel guide free to help plan your vacation.
The European Masters. Now, you don't find great works of art like this just anywhere.
You do in Texas, Marge.
Oh, Mexico. There's nothing like it.
Except we're in Texas, Marge, not Mexico.
Well, we're still having a mighty fine time right here in
Call 1-800-8888-TEX for your free Texas travel guide and discover why Texas is like a whole other country.
Rookie Nick Van Exel meets Carl Malone, Lakers, Jazz, tonight at 9 Eastern. Then tomorrow, Shaq invades Chicago. Magic, Bulls, tomorrow at 8 Eastern on TNT.
And now, if you'll allow me this thought. Tell me you never considered this even once during all that miserable scandal last month, that Tonya Harding would be a perfect wrestling villain. And now she will apparently get that chance. When she goes to Japan next week for the World Figure Skating Championships, the head of the All Japan Women's Professional Wrestling Association will formally make her a $2 million offer to join his group. In fact, a representative of that organization is in Oregon this week, hoping to meet with the embattled U.S. figure skating champion. Takashi Matsunaga even says he foresees a change in image for Tonya Harding, but she would have to be, in his words now, a bad guy at first, but eventually she could be the heroine, quote unquote. Actually, this takes it a step further than what I'd imagined one sordid evening of conjuring. I simply figured she would make the perfect wrestling manager. You know, the gum-chewing, fast-talking ditz with a gimmick outside the ropes, either a sexy teddy or a business suit, maybe a geisha gown, something like that, hard-hitting Harding in her tag team. Maybe a fat guy with a bad haircut named Sean and a skinny ex-husband named Jeff. And she'd be hiding the crowbar in her briefcase, and when the ref's not looking, you're way ahead of me, aren't you? The infamous knee crack does them in every time. Now, you scoff at such an idea that someone from the pristine tutu world of figure skating would even entertain such an idea. But first, we're not talking about the secretary of the local chapter of the Daughters of the American Quilting Association. We're talking pickup truck and unfiltered camels here. And second, this is a national figure skating champion who's been turned down by No Excuses Jeans. Nobody of national repute gets turned down by them. So a $2 million offer from Japanese wrestling might sound not only intriguing, but very practical right now, considering her mounting legal costs, among other items. And besides, it's in Japan. Who's going to see? So laugh now, but don't be surprised if it happens. A triple axel on your head, all perfect sixes. It's just a thought. A programming reminder for you for all the day's scores and highlights. Make sure you check out the boys of the evening on CNN Sports Tonight at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, and I'll be back with more sports this afternoon in the 2 o'clock Eastern hour here on CNN. Reed?
Well, as we know, artists go back to the classics for inspiration. Now, one author's gone back to the Bible to convert modern readers to some classical ideas about food. Sherry Dean reports.
Paul Theroux's novel, The Mosquito Coast, inspired a movie of the same title starring Harrison Ford. And while the author wouldn't mind if his newest novel, Milroy the Magician, is made into a movie, he hopes it inspires readers to eat healthier, perhaps return to the diet of biblical days.
The Bible is full of food. My book is full of food. My book is about a man who runs a chain of restaurants, and they're health food, but the health food is based on Bible food.
In order to bring the foods of the Bible, which are mentioned in Milroy the Magician, to life, Theroux hosted a luncheon at the Mark Hotel in New York City.
We were thinking of loaves and fishes.
We did a fish wrapped in potato and leek crust with parsley on a succotash of mixed bean.
Prophets knew a lot about fiber. People in the Bible, you know, they live to 150 years, 200 years, 300 years. They live an awful long time. And maybe that's the reason.
And what kind of dessert was inspired by the Bible, a la Milroy?
The Book of Nahum has a lot of figs. Figs,
apricots, dates.
Yeah. Dried fruit was a very important feature of the Middle Eastern diet. So we have those. And this is a purse of dried fruit.
Did you go back to the Bible and take notes on the food before writing this book?
Yes, I took notes on the food that was mentioned. I read about biblical history.
Those who attended the luncheon had varying opinions as to its biblical authenticity. Did you notice at all that the food at this meal resembled the foods of the Bible?
I'd love to think that it did. One would like to think of one's ancestors sitting in a tent there, eating something that might have been produced by Philippe Blue here, but I think it might be a leap of the imagination.
It was authentically biblical. It was delicious, yet cutting edge and up to date, at the same time authentic and old, and I was there.
The Bible I didn't read, I just read Paul's book.
Theroux believes readers of Milroy the Magician will think about their diet. And yes, he hopes they like the story, too. Sherry Dean, CNN, New York.
Well, some weather has been biblical of late. Let's find out what's in store for a new week and go to Flip Spiceland. Flip?
Indeed, it has, Reed, a winter of weather of biblical proportion, but not now. We're in for some pretty nice weather for most of the country. Let me tell you about the bad stuff first, as we usually do. You see although this really isn't that bad, you see a frontal system swinging down here through the upper Midwest, northern plain states, and then down into the Midwest. And see an awful lot of cloudiness in association with that. But the bark here is a lot worse than the bite. This is not nearly as bad as it looks. There's a little bit of light snow coming through the Great Lakes area, a little bit of rain, but nothing really untoward out of that weather system. Going to sweep on through, and in many places will virtually be a weatherless frontal system. We'll move through the northeast. Think some showers maybe in New York tomorrow. This storm that is affecting the east is quickly moving on away. We have another storm down here in Texas, and that doesn't seem to be going anywhere at all. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the forecast weather maps. Very warm conditions continue in the west. We had all kinds of record-setting high temperatures yesterday, not only in California, Los Angeles, San Francisco, all up to record highs. We had record highs in the northern Rockies, too. They're going to be warm and sunny again today. Coastal areas of the northwest might see a little bit of drizzle, maybe a few sprinkles. The color radar summary shows very little precipitation anywhere in the west. You can see that frontal system coming down through the Midwest. Again, there is some snow in here and some rain. There's the storm in the east that is moving away. So the forecast weather maps look like this. Here it comes. Not a lot of activity with it, just some scattered snow through the Great Lakes region. This isn't moving much at all. As we step through this, look, it still isn't moving much at all. This little disturbance down here in Mexico. Now, we thought that one time that'd sweep on across and move up the east coast. That's now, we're pretty sure, not going to happen. But this is going to slide on through, and there is some cold air coming in behind it. Not behind this front, but behind this one, too. And then by tomorrow evening, that front will be affecting the northeast, like I said, with just a few sprinkles, maybe some light snowfall. There is another little blast of cold air coming on in behind it. But look at this, down here in Texas. It remains down here in Texas with little movement at all. We'll be back in a moment and take a look at all of the rest of the forecast weather maps. But right now, it's time for the CNN Ski Report.
The Kaufman Fund is one of the best five-year track records in the business, according to the New York Times, with more than twice the average total return of all mutual funds. The Kaufman Fund invests in companies with substantial growth prospects. The fund is managed by Wall Street's dynamic duo, Hans Utsch and Lawrence Oriana. They were awarded Morningstar's highest five-star rating. Call now for your prospectus, 1-800-824-0600. The Kaufman Fund, 1-800-824-0600. That's 1-800-824-0600.
Hello, doctor.
What time will he be in?
My sinuses, they're killing me.
Doctor, I feel awful.
I'm so congested.
I can't breathe at all. I really need some help.
When it's bad enough to call the doctor, it's bad enough for Tavis D. Only now you don't need a prescription because Tavis D, the same antihistamine decongestant that was the most prescribed by doctors, is now the most recommended by doctors for 12 hours of relief.
I feel good. Better.
Great. Tavis D. One tablet, 12 hours, no prescription.
Where do you get your wish for a fish? Even a king doesn't do it like this. Wendy doesn't have this original crunch. A better dip taste, don't go on a hunch. Go fish.
Your search is over. Long John Silver's is the only place you'll find that one-of-a-kind batter dip taste. And now for a limited time, get our original one-piece fish and fries for just $1.79.
If a better dip taste will grant your wish, well, it's Long John Silver's when you want to go fish.
Tonight, in this town, spiritualism not only exists, it's the claim to fame. Larry Woods goes across America to a place where intuitive powers are the major industry, the Psychic City, on CNN's Prime News, 8 Eastern tonight.
A frontal boundary reaches across Europe, and we're showing it stationary, but it really is moving, sort of snaking on to the east, and scattered showers and windy conditions continue along that frontal boundary. High pressure in place for much of Japan, so Tokyo will be sunny, although cooler, as will Seoul, and this stationary boundary reaches on back toward China, bringing some scattered showers probably in the vicinity of Hong Kong. And that's the latest look at the forecast for the nation and the world. We'll be back later with more, but now back to Bobby and Reed.
Well, there are people who live on the very fringe of Russia, but what happens in Moscow has a direct impact on their lives.
The people of Sakhalin Island have weathered hardship, failed dreams, and now they're waiting to see what fate the future may hold. As CNN's Eileen O'Connor reports.
This seems to be the end of the world, Chekhov once wrote of this place. And there is nowhere else to go. For the people of Sakhalin Island, at the far eastern reaches of the Russian Empire, those words have always rung true. A penal colony during the time of the Tsars, a closed military outpost under communism. The people who came here were told they were pioneers, building the socialist dream. But the dream went bust. Now it is only would-be soldiers left behind. There are no secrets. All the difficulties of life here are for anyone to see. 1 year after yet another dream was shattered. They were again pioneers, this time trying to build capitalism. The restaurants were full of Western businessmen, pushing ahead with deals. The Russian Hong Kong, that was the dream. But this is the reality. Even with massive privatization, it was prices, not production, that increased on the island. So they threw out their progressive governor, replacing him with Yevgeny Krasnoyarov.
I'm for reforms, but without the shock.
Krasnoyarov found, like so many other provincial administrators, that the old Soviet command system was tough to dismantle, let alone replace.
The models they think up in Moscow are very painful when put into practice out here. There's a huge distance, a weak infrastructure, a lack of transportation. It all adds up. I'm on the side of a gradual transition to a market economy.
And now so is the rest of the Russian government. With Sakhalin, a wealth of natural resources, oil, timber, and fish, there were plenty of deals to be made. But now some are on hold or held up by new bureaucracies.
3 years ago, Sakhalin was famous around the world for being the leader in market economy in Russia. Now Sakhalin is being forgotten.
So while one experiment replaces another, the people can only wait. After all, as Chekhov said, there is nowhere else to go. Eileen O'Connor, CNN, Uzhno-Sakhalinsk.
And that is it for NewsHour. I'm Bobby Batista at CNN Center in Atlanta.
And I'm Reed Collins in Washington. Sonia Live is next, and here is Sonia Friedman with a preview.
Thanks, Bobby and Reed. It's that children's book question. Are you my mother? A surprised adopted child asks a woman he's never met, are you my mother? And why are you here? Next on Sonia Live.